Hello, dear Ella and Haley. We welcome you in Q&A session for your films. Hopefully, the viewers also can have a possibility to watch them. And during this Q&A, we hope to get to know more about you, your work, and your plans for future. Thank you for spending this time with us. We would like to start with Ella. Hi. We have on the festival two of your films, Over the Moon and Caterpillar Kisses. Can you please introduce yourself, your artistic background, and how you came to make those films?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, by the way, too. It's really cool to be able to talk to you guys and do this Q&A and also have the films be a part of this film festival. So I just wanted to say I appreciate that a lot. So my name is Ella Fields. I'm a 19-year-old filmmaker, originally from California, but now going to school in Massachusetts. My films tend to focus on sort of coming of age, romance, themes of queerness and what it's like to grow up in this day and age. And also, I love including like surrealism and multimedia elements in my films, which is kind of something that has been a through line with a lot of my work. I have been making films since I was a tiny little kid. I was always super into just being creative and putting on shows with my sister. My dad got me a little camera when I was 6, and I just started filming everything. So that was kind of the start of my love for just capturing the world around me with a camera. And then when I was 11, I got the opportunity to study making films in my middle school, which was a really cool opportunity. So that's sort of when I started making films and like writing screenplays, like working with actors and like my friends, and just really feeling like I was starting to make short films and learn how to do that. So yeah, I fell in love with it for sure at a very young age, and now I am in college and studying it at Emerson College as well. So yeah, that is a bit of my background. And then Caterpillar Kisses was a film that I made in 2020 and 2021. So it was like in the midst of the pandemic. The film is an experimental film, and it's about the process of falling in love and having your heart broken and sort of the cycles that come along with that, and also how you communicate with yourself in different versions or in different moments of time, like different versions of yourself. So it's sort of an experimental depiction of that, but it was a goal of mine to find a way to collaborate in the pandemic remotely. So I worked with a bunch of different visual artists to create pieces for like the center of the film. So that is Caterpillar Kisses, and then Over the Moon is about a girl who is spending her last night in her childhood bedroom, and she's about to go to college, and she finds a box of her old children's books and goes through this process of reliving a lot of her experiences throughout childhood and adolescence before moving forward into this next chapter of her life. So yeah, those are the two films that are a part of this.
Over the
Yeah,
Moon has.
yeah,
Go on,
sorry.
please.
I just want to mention that you are only 19 years old, but you have already created around 30 short films. It's a really big number. And I would like to ask if in all of your film, do you combine live action and animation, or Over the Moon and Caterpillar Kisses is something that you started to use for the first time?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I do think that I've always very much been into this, creating like this sort of storybook world with my films. It never really took the form in the multimedia, like animation, live action aspect, really until quarantine. It was difficult to make, like film was just a difficult medium to work on because it takes like so many people and like a crew and just resources that are kind of difficult to come across when you're like locked in your home. So I feel like at that point in time, I started experimenting more with other mediums of art. So I started painting more, I started drawing more, like collaging, and kind of got into these new realms of art. And then when I came back to film, I feel like I sort of took these new art forms with me and tried to find ways to implement them into film as well. So I think Caterpillar Kisses was the first time that I combined animation and live action. But yeah, it's sort of from there, I feel like, is an element that I try and use in a lot of my work and like have used in films after that as well.
Yeah, and what's your biggest inspiration for Caterpillar Kisses? Because you use so many types of animation, do you have some favorite authors that you like?
An inspiration for Caterpillar Kisses, I feel like this was a little bit more like thematically than visually, but Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by Michel Gondry was a really big inspiration just in terms of like the memory of love, the cycles of love. There's also parts of that movie where Clementine, the protagonist, her hair color changes throughout the film that sort of represents like the different stages of the relationship that's going on, and also more symbolically the different seasons. So I took inspiration with like the different hair colors in Caterpillar Kisses from that film. And I think visually, it was so fun to like find artists to work on it, because I just went on Instagram and like went to like different websites and just like resources that I had access to, and like just looked for artists and like found artists and just watched their work and just like consumed so much art on the journey of like looking for people to work with. So I think I took a lot of inspiration just like honestly from these artists that I ended up working with, and not all of them had done like film before. A lot of them were like just painters or just collagers. So I feel like it was really cool to work with them and find ways to add movement to their work. So it was almost like pulling inspiration from their previous work and then using that inspiration to create a new piece for Caterpillar Kisses. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the other film, Over the Moon. What led you to choose such an interesting storytelling form, like using the excerpts from the, as I understand, real children's books that you own?
So I think it was about a year before I was about to go to college and graduate high school. So I must have been about, I think I was like 16 or 17, because I think it was pre-pandemic. But I basically had actually come across a box that I hadn't seen since I was a kid, and it had a bunch of books that I read as a kid in it. And I spent hours just sitting at this box and like reading these stories and like reliving all of these stories. And I got really inspired by that experience of just reminiscing in that way. And so I started writing Over the Moon before the pandemic, and it sort of like wasn't taking the form that I was hoping. Like there was just something that felt like it was missing from it, but I wasn't really sure what it was. But then I think, so I like put it on the shelf for a bit, and then about a year passed, and I was actually in the process of like getting ready to move out of my childhood home and like move to another state for college. And within like feeling all those emotions and going through that process, I sort of picked the script back up. And I feel like a lot of things fell into place that just sort of came from me actually being in the space that the protagonist of the film was in. And so because I think like a big part of a lot of my films in high school were creating this sort of fairy tale storybook world, it was really cool to look through these actual storybooks and like use them as a tool to like kind of connect them to things I had experienced in my like childhood and adolescence, and also films I had made throughout childhood and adolescence. So Over the Moon sort of felt like this big homage page to kind of all of the art that I created throughout that time leading up until then. And it also, I think a big part of the film too is this sort of inner child healing, and also an exploration of how the stories that we read as kids affect the way that we view the world in really like really big ways. And so yeah, using the stories that already existed and that like I actually read as a kid, and that a lot of people I know read as a kid, and just were like really popular and really like shaped a lot of the ways that like people in my generation who read those books view the world. I thought it was really cool to explore like themes of those, but in this sort of like adolescent way, or just kind of connecting it to other stories and elements of stories that I wanted to tell. So yeah, it was a cool avenue, like thematically and also like visually too, to be able to actually pull from the illustrations of these books and like pair them alongside things that I had shot for the film. And yeah, it definitely felt very healing and helped me kind of conclude that chapter of my life in a lot of ways before going off to college.
Yeah, I really like how the pictures from the book transform to another scene. It's really working and it's good. And I'm just interested, when you moved to college, did you took your favorite books with you, or did you left them at home?
That was a good question. I actually, I think I left most of them at home. There was a copy of Goodnight Moon, which is like one of the books that's, I think, featured the most in the film. And there's a shot at the very end of the film where it's a scan of it's like the Goodnight Moon room, and there's like a plane flying through the window over the moon at the end. And so that scan is like a little bit beat up and worn down, and that actually is like the book that I read as a kid. But before going to college, right when I made this film, my mom actually bought me a new copy of the book, and it was so sweet to pair them side by side. It was like this one I read as a kid and this one that my mom had gotten me with that was like new and that I brought with me to college. So I didn't bring all of them because it would be quite heavy, I think. But it was nice to have sort of that new version that my mom had gotten me.
I wanted to ask about your work with the actors, because one of the things that personally inspired me in your work was how truthful and emotional the performance was, especially in Over the Moon, as it is a bit more based in traditional storytelling. Can you please tell us about your methods? Because as you were saying, you were starting working with non-actors, with your family, friends, and classmates. How did this work evolve for you?
That is a really good question. I definitely have had experience working with both people who have like had experience acting and also people who I'm just friends with and want to work with and are interested in creating something together. A big way that I've found a lot of the actors that I've worked with is through Instagram, and I think that's been something that's been really cool about having people, or just like the usage of social media, which it's always like an interesting battle, I think, when it comes to social media and art and like how to use it in correct ways. But I do think that finding actors has been something that's been really successful. So with Over the Moon, Remy Cannon, is the actor in the film, and I basically posted something on Instagram that was a call for auditions, and I had a bunch of people send in self-tapes. And then I loved Remy so much, and I kind of knew them through like mutual friends a little bit, so they were sort of like in my social sphere to a certain extent, but I'd never met them before. So I think, yeah, that was an instance where they had prior like theater acting experience and like really like knew what they were doing, but also was somebody who was just kind of around and like lived near me and knew some of the same people. And then, yeah, there have also been other really cool experiences with meeting people online. There was a film I made in 2018 called Bubblegum, and I met somebody named Eleanor Bastable who actually lived near London, and I was in California, which was like so far, but she her mom had like her mom just has such this way of traveling where she can like figure out ways to like get so many things for free and just like do it. So she was able to fly out to California, and we got to like get to know each other and work together, and then like became friends after that. So I do think that there have been a lot of instances of working like with experienced actors and some with just friends. I think working with friends has its own benefits because you already kind of know each other and just like understand like how each other operates in like a personal level, and like it's really cool to be able to grow that creatively and have certain ways of communicating that come alongside friendship as opposed to like getting to know somebody on set. But I definitely have certain techniques I think that I'm learning to use more and like have been using more with actors. This past film that I made in college called Merry Go Round, I tried a lot of techniques of like making playlists for the actors and like letting them like choose songs that correlated with their characters. And a lot of like during table reads and stuff, we had a certain technique where they would there'd be the line that they were saying, but then I would come up with like an alternate line that they would think. So it was like they're thinking something different than the words that they're saying, but it helps them sort of like communicate what the actual message behind those lines written are. So I do think that I'm like always in the process of like collecting new techniques and just ways of working with actors because I really, really love to, but it definitely is cool when actors can come in with their own experience and their own techniques to say like, this is what works for me, and like learn as a director too, things that the actors have previously learned and they know work for them. So yeah, both definitely have their own ways of being, but I definitely love working with friends and more experienced actors.
I want to ask how important was scene where mother goes to kindergarten with the kid, because the story is about a girl that is going to college and she's sad, and there is a scene where she goes to kindergarten or basic school with mother. Yeah, but the next step, the next school where she goes, she will go alone. So I think the scene is quite important, and I would like to ask it about.
Totally, yeah. So I like that was definitely very much based off of like personal experience, but also was very cathartic because the kindergarten classroom that we shot at was actually the kindergarten classroom that I went to kindergarten in. So it was my elementary school named Chime Charter, and they always let me film there, which was always really special to kind of revisit the childhood self of mine that like went to that school. But I had such a vivid memory of like starting the first day of kindergarten and like not wanting to leave my mom and just like staying on to her and like being so scared to like enter this new room. And so that entire scene was really cool because the actual space that that happened in, I was able to revisit and film that scene in. And also my mom played the mom in the film as well. So I think for her to work with Sammy, the younger actress, and like for her also to be like standing in that same doorway and like having this little girl hug onto her and then like run away into the classroom, I think was very cathartic for both of us and was just really sweet to be able to film that scene there and revisit that and like have my mom be a part of it too.
Yeah, but you decided not to show her face because it's not story about her, of course.
Yeah, I think that decision was mostly just like, yeah, this is like the story of the girl and not as much like the parents. But yeah, also my mom was like, don't film my face. That was also an element of it. But yeah.
And how feeling it was filming something so personal for you in places where you lived? How did you feel?
Very healing, very cathartic. It definitely sort of helped with like my goal for the film was sort of to bring a lot of things full circle emotionally before leaving, and definitely like the film itself served that. But I think also just being able to go back and revisit so many places that meant so much to me was just really cool to experience.
Thank you for telling us about your filmmaking process. And to finish with talking about your films, can you please tell us what are you working on next? You mentioned one of the films that you made. I suppose you've already finished in college, but do you have anything in production or in the plans right now?
So yeah, that film I mentioned is called Merry-Go-Round. It actually is up on YouTube right now, and we finished it like over summer, and like released it earlier this year. So that was definitely like a big thing that I had worked on since Over the Moon. But right now am writing a few different things and sort of working on like I feel like I'm sort of retreating back to that like part of me in quarantine that started experimenting with different mediums. Like I'm doing an embroidery project right now, some stuff with like photography and collage. So those are sort of the general projects that I'm working on, but also I'm in an LGBTQ writing class at my school where I'm writing my first feature film. So I don't know if necessarily that will like be going into production anytime soon or in the future, but it is my first time with writing something of that length. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. And like it's in such the beginning stages, so I feel like it's not anything like super tangible yet, but it's exciting to be working on.
Thank you so much, Ella. We will be moving to the next person, Halley, with her film Silver. Can you hear us, Halley?
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me here, and thank you so much again for having my film in your festival. It's such a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it. My name is Halley, and I'm from California in the USA, and I've lived here my whole life, and I'm currently attending college here at California Institute of the Arts. Throughout my whole life, I've been involved in nature a lot. My family spent a lot of time like going to national parks and doing like different hikes in nature and going to like lakes and oceans. So I've spent a lot of time in nature, and it shows up in my work a lot without me even realizing it. A lot of my films end up being about people in nature, like, you know, it's just a beautiful place to be. And I also have been an artist for my entire life. For as long as I can remember, I've always thought I want to be an artist when I grow up. And my path to animation, it was kind of, I realized at one point, I was watching a movie, Big Hero 6, actually, and it just kind of hit me that people had to make these things for like a living. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an animator.
And how was the story of Silver born? What was your inspiration for it?
Oh yeah, the story of Silver is, what I was trying to do with that film was capture the feeling of when you're arguing with someone that you love, but you can't just, and it's like a very complicated feeling because on one hand, you know, you're very upset at them and you're angry with them, and you know, you're like, what is this relationship like? What am I doing with this person? They're causing me to be so upset. But at the same time, you can't just throw away that relationship because you have so much history together, and like there's so much more there than just the feelings of anger. Like there's so much below the surface that it's difficult to like understand and comprehend, but at the same time, it's like you can't just throw away that relationship. And it was just inspired like throughout my life, like dealing with like interpersonal relationships with like friends and family, and like particularly it's inspired about arguing with my parents as teenagers do. And just the feelings that kind of came along with that, like the feelings of like guilt and anger and like trying to grapple with those. And yeah, that's how that story came to be.
And what did you enjoy most working on the film?
I think my favorite part of this filmmaking process was being able to work on the environmental animation and use a very different art style than I have used before. This film, I made it as part of my first year college program. So every year at my school, we have to make a final film. And this was the one I made for my first year. And for our first year, we're required to make our films in black and white. And I am someone who really loves working with color, so that was a bit of a bummer to me. And I wanted to try and make the film in a way that I don't particularly like working with grayscale, so I wanted to try and use just like solid values. I think in the film I only ended up using 3 values, so that was very challenging for me, but I really loved being able to like work with that challenge and trying to figure out how to make it work, especially like with animating shadows and like how light interacts with forms in that style, and trying to wrap my head around how can I animate the light shifting on clothing. It was very challenging, but I also loved trying to figure it out. And also working on the environmental animation, the underwater animation, in the scene where there's seaweed and the necklace is like falling into the bottom of the lake, animating, I think my favorite part of the entire process was animating the fish there because they were so little and fun to animate.
Can you please tell us about how you were working with your animation technique on this film? Because it looks very stylized, and it's very hard to understand what exactly was your medium, to be honest. So I wanted to ask you on your technique on this particular film, and how you like to work in animation in general, in your background and in your current projects.
Yeah. For Silver, I used the program TV Paint to do all my animation and backgrounds in. I just did everything in that one program so that everything could have more of a consistent feel. I didn't want the animation to feel separated from the background at all. So I just made sure to do everything in that one program to make sure it was all cohesive. My animation technique was a combination of straight ahead and pose to pose. I would go through and do pose to pose for like more of the acting animation and the parts where like characters were moving around, and I had to more like tricky to figure out, and I had to like go through and refine the key poses so that they were solid and made sense, and then I could go through and in between and make sure to keep all like the little light and shadow shapes in a way that made sense. One thing that I really realized working on this film is that I didn't have to get it exactly right. Like there's one part where the main character is walking and his back is to the camera, and you can see a lot of the folds on his fabric and like the way the light moves. I ended up redoing that shot like 3 times because every time I did it, it didn't feel right. And I realized I was trying too hard to make it perfect. I had taken a reference of myself doing that motion since that was very difficult. And so for that shot, I ended up having to put my reference away and just realize I just needed to capture the feeling of the fabric moving on the clothing. And if you look closely, it kind of doesn't make any sense. But like when you watch the film and you're not really, when you're watching a film, you're not like nitpicking the animation like that. It reads and it looks good. So a lot of the main thing that kind of like breakthrough for me when working on Silver was I just had to capture the feeling rather than trying to like make it exactly right, and that ended up working a lot better. For when I was actually drawing the frames, I did it in almost like a painterly way. Like I didn't do lines and then fill them in. I just painted the shapes with the brushes that I had in the program, and then I would go through and in between every frame in that way. And I think that gave it kind of the almost like the very like painterly feel that it has. So I'm very happy with how that ended up turning out. Yeah.
To be honest, this technique sounds quite difficult, especially maybe for people without animation background. Could you just maybe in general explain your workflow, or how you were going from choosing to work this way to working in this combination?
Yeah, so I started this film with just like a rough animatic that just like established the different shots that were going to be throughout the scene, throughout the film. And then after that, I went into TV Paint, and the first thing I did was establish the background so that I could like get a feel for like how the characters would actually move within those backgrounds and make sure that it felt natural and that they were like meant to be there. And then after the backgrounds were established, after I had the animatic, so I knew what was going to happen, I would go through and do just key poses for everything, which is basically just like animating the film, but on like 12 frames, but like on 2 frames per second instead of 12 frames per second. So just like going through and getting everything on that, and then just in betweening from there. And then after that, when everything was animated, I put the film into another editing software and added just like subtle lighting changes so that certain scenes would like feel like slightly lighter and other scenes would feel darker. But in doing this, I also wanted to keep the feeling of it being just like two values and silhouettes. So I made sure to keep those changes very subtle so that they don't really jump out at you. They don't break the feeling of of it just being like two flat colors, but you still like get the feeling of like when, like for example, when the necklace is going deeper into the lake, the colors on screen are getting slightly darker, but I tried to keep it subtle so that it doesn't really jump out and break the illusion that everything is just two values.
I also know you a lot of draw digital painting. I looked on your Instagram when you have a lot of your works, and I would like to ask how important was the lake in the film, because I can imagine that the main character could throw the silver, for example, to for trash bin. Yeah, why did you decide for a lake? Maybe I know because you lived in Asia, of course, and it's more environmental, but why exactly the lake? What does it symbolize for you?
Oh yeah, the lake is I spend a lot of time like just I was on swim team for like 15 years of my life, so swimming is a big part of my life. I've also just like always loved swimming in lakes, the ocean, rivers, public pools, like anywhere that I can get in the water. I just love swimming. It's always been like an escape for me. And with this film kind of being like, okay, like if I lived near a lake, I would go to the lake all the time just to like sit there and process my feelings. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I want my character to go to a lake. And honestly, my main motivation with including the lake was I wanted to animate that underwater scene with all the seaweed and the fish. I wanted to try my hand at that. And yeah, the lake kind of just symbolizes a place where you can just like be like with yourself, you know, like when you're swimming in like water, you can't really, it's kind of like you're, even like when you're with other people, it's like you are like an individual. Like when you sink underwater, you can't hear anyone except for like your own thoughts in the water. And to that, it's like very like a kind of like an escapism thing. Like I've made another film where characters are swimming in a public pool, and a film I'm currently working on now is about characters swimming in an ocean. So it's just a motif that I keep coming back to, water.
You've already mentioned that one of your influences on becoming an animation artist was Big Hero 6. But what is inspiring you from the animation of today or of the past, or maybe live action or some other types of arts?
Yeah, I find a lot of inspiration from recently a lot of fine arts paintings, like particularly like fine artists from China. I've been very inspired by a lot of their work. In terms of animation, I think I really love old style films where they had to work with like a lot of limitations with the media, because obviously like 100 years ago, they didn't have all these digital programs and all these like, it's so much easier to make films nowadays than it was like even 20 years ago. It was like so much more of a struggle. Like my animation teachers talk to me and they're like, 20 years ago, you guys would have been doing all this on paper. And it's like, I can't even imagine. But I really love paper cutout films in particular. I worked with paper cutout a lot in my early, when I was starting to experiment with animation. My first film I ever made was actually fully done on paper with, I cut out every single frame myself and pasted them on a paper background and shot it with my phone. And I've just like done a lot with traditional animation on paper. So I've always been inspired by like old films where they have to like shoot everything on paper and they have to figure out how to make that feel coherent and make it feel like it's make it have like an overall feeling still. And a couple films in particular that I find really inspiring is particularly for silver with like the silhouettes. one of the first animated feature films, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, and another short film that is The Tale About the Cat in the Moon. I found really inspiring. That is it's just a short film that's just black and white silhouettes, and it has a lot of animated camera moves and a lot of like just very visually like beautiful animation that like really kind of just sucks you in, and I find stuff like that like really inspiring to me.
Okay, maybe we can start with Bryn, if she is here. What do you think? Hello, Bryn, are you here? Oh, never mind. So maybe I would like to ask for one more thing. What is your biggest inspiration for making films, Halley?
I think my biggest inspiration is my family, and also just like memories I have throughout my life, and kind of I kind of see filmmaking as more of a poetic way of storytelling rather than just like strict storytelling. And so with my work, I'm always trying to capture a feeling than tell a story. And I feel like a lot of my work is like very inspired from like poetry I read when I was younger, and just like the feeling I've had from like being in nature when I was younger, and just trying to put those feelings into my own work is that's my biggest inspiration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Halley. And with that, we will be moving to our last participant for today. Can you please introduce yourself and your film? Can you hear us?
Oh, hi. My name is Bryn, and my film is Mosquito Fish.
And can you explain what Mosquito Fish is for people that haven't seen your film?
Mosquito Fish is a film about a bunch of little fish that will eat mosquito larvae in the water.
Yeah, and Mosquito Fish isn't your first film on this festival. You already had filmed Bad Books, is it right? Yeah. And both of these films have environmental topic. Is it important for you?
Yeah, it is. I'd say
Okay. But I also know that you animated your third film, Butterfly Playground, and it's a little bit different. You combine live action and animation. Yes?
Yeah,
And
I did.
yes. And what do you enjoy the most about animation?
I enjoy animation I enjoy a lot of the animation, but I really enjoy claymation, which is kind of my thing. However, I do want to try some 2D in a while, maybe.
Can you tell us how you started with claymation?
I really enjoy clay, and liked building things with clay, liked doing things. But then I learned about something called claymation, which is an animated version of clay where you move it and it looks like it's doing something.
And how do you manage to be so patient with clay animation?
I just try to I kind of try to get into the right mindset, because if I know if I rush, then it's not going to look too good.
And what is the hardest thing on clay animation for you? Is it being patient, or how long time does it take? What is the bad thing on clay animation?
Something, I think one of the hardest things to do in clay animation is it's kind of hard to do it or be patient with it. Also, it doesn't take like a few days. It's just like, because I believe bedbugs took me about 3 months to complete.
And have you tried other animation techniques like paper cutouts or working with puppet or some other ways of animating?
I've done 2D before, and I think I've never personally tried to do some other kind of animation. However, I think my brother has done a lot of different kinds of animation before.
Were you working with him on your films?
No, I usually just work alone.
I know that you have your own YouTube channel and websites. Can you tell us more about it? Why did you create it?
I decided to create it to be an easier way to find them. So that way, instead of saying, "Oh, it's on my YouTube channel and the name is," then I could just say the website name, and that people could go to the website instead of having to go all the way to YouTube and try to find me.
Yeah, and what people say about it? Does they like it? Because I do. How people react on your films?
A lot of people, I think some people have not seen it, but I think it's quite good. And a lot of the time, it's just quite nice.
I wanted to go back to your films. Can you tell us why you decided to make those stories? And also, what I really liked about Mosquito Fish is just how well it's told, how interesting it is, how it's exciting to watch. And can you tell us about your writing process?
So I think I kind of like doing, like, I told the story in an interesting way for that one. It was, how you should try not to use mosquito fish in a bad way, and the good things and bad things about how the things are. Like, and I also wanted to solve a few problems for people, because apparently there's been a lot of problems in the last few years about mosquitoes happening. So I wanted to try to make a film addressing how you can solve that problem with mosquito fish.
And do you have mosquitoes fish at their home or garden?
No, because we don't have a giant pond or fountain. However, we do know a place that carries mosquito fish here.
You mentioned that mosquito fish are experiencing a lot of trouble these days. Can you tell us what exactly is happening?
What was that again?
You mentioned that you wanted to talk about the troubles with the mosquito fish and the state that they are in.
Oh, yeah. So I think sometimes people can misuse them, like thinking when they're done with them, they're like, oh, I'm done with them. I'm going to just dump them into a lake. They're fish. But no, because they are a native fish, if you dump them into a river that's not native, then they're going to probably overpopulate the other fish that are there.
And what would you like to say to kids that are watching you? I can imagine a lot of younger kids are watching this festival, your films. Would you like to say something to them? For example, if they should start clay animation too?
I would recommend that kids, if they feel like they want to do animation, I think it's a great idea. They just need to have the time, the patience, and kind of the materials. Because if you have those three things, then you can probably make your own animation.
And what would you like to film next? Do you have some story in your head?
Ooh, I'm actually working on the next film, and I do have a story, and it's called Metamorphosis. That's my next film.
What is it about?
Oh, what is it about? It's about kind of like how things change in the world, and they can also change in people too.
Is there any
And-
particular problem that you're interested in, or the theme for Metamorphosis? Like, for example, from the aspect of people, or fish, or mammals, or some other part of natural world?
I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again?
I wanted to ask if you have any ideas what you wanted to which story you wanted to tell with Metamorphosis. Do you want to tell something about animals? Do you want to tell something about humans? Or what is the thing that interests you?
I'm trying to connect the similarities between animals and humans. However, I'm not directly referencing humans. However, I am using animals to show how things change.
And is it again animation, Bryn? Metamorphosis is again animation?
Yes, it is animation.
Oh, okay. I'm looking very much forward when it will be finished.
In a bit. I don't quite know yet.
Mhm.
However, I am gonna probably get a little bit further on it. Probably around now.
You changed since last year very much. You grew up. You are now one small lady. Last year you were kind of child, and now I can see how you changed from the last year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We would like to ask both you, Bryn, and our other participants to give some last words to our viewers, be them just regular audience or filmmakers or We all are artists at heart. What would you like to sell them?
I would probably like to say, if you really try your best, then you can do anything.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
That's great advice for everybody, yeah? So that's how you reached your goals with your films, right? And they are winning the festivals, if I'm right? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are only 11, but you are talking like a wisdom person. So I wish you all the best, and I hope I can see a lot of more of your films. Maybe you can mention your YouTube channel where we can see your next films. How is it called?
I think it's called Bryn Wright, if I'm correct.
Yes.
It's been a bit. So yeah. It's called Bryn Wright.
We would like to thank Bryn, Ella, and Haley for joining us today. Thank you for telling about yourself, about your work, and giving us a bit of valuable insight into your work methods, into your motivation and inspirations. And we wish you good days at the festival. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bryn.
Have a